It was a wrong turn, accidental, and I wish it had been intentional. That's my goal now, to help people make an intentional decision to choose business aviation, flying, non-flying, whatever. Wow, we have a lot to offer. Just don't make us your alternate plan. Maybe intent, this could be your intent.
That's so awesome. Because like you, I went through school, college, and I didn't hear anything about the general aviation side of it. It was all commercial based. And I knew I didn't want to fly not too long after I got, my third year or so. But I talked to other people on the podcast, and a lot of the schools are still not offering, they're still not pushing that business aviation side of it, which is unfortunate. So I'm just so glad you guys are working on it, because I think more people need to know it's available. Hello and welcome to the Business Aviation Collective podcast, sponsored by LD Aviation. I'm your host, Lindsay, and today we get a chance to talk to Jo Damato, whom you probably all know. Jo has been with the NBAA for 23 years. She is the Senior Vice President of Education, Training, and Workforce Development. And a little fun fact is that Jo was flying before she was even driving a car. So, hi, Jo.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you for having me. This is a great way to start the new year.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. I'm so glad. I want to hear all about your career, but I want to start off. How did you start flying before you even were driving?
Well, that's a thing that only New Jersey people know, because people are always surprised that you can't get your driver's license in New Jersey until you're 17. And now that my youngest is 16, I realize why that's a gift. You're in no rush for them to be getting out on the road, even for the inconvenience of still operating the mom Uber. But in New Jersey, you cannot get your driver's license until you're 17. And I was that high schooler who wanted to learn how to fly, and of course, soloed at 16, which sometimes if you're the teenage pilot, you want to hit those milestones that they tell you should want to hit. Solo at 16, get your license at 17. So I started flying when I was 15, and I did solo when I was 16. So there I was doing cross country. And I went to a Catholic school about 10 miles from our little airport, the Flying W in South New Jersey. And my mom would pick me up at school in my Catholic school uniform, and she would drive me to the airport. And I would get out of the car and, with my, skirt and school sweater, pick up the airplane keys, do a pre-flight, and I would go and practice in the practice area or my landings, or, maybe that's when I was doing a cross country. So, and then, I had to call from a payphone to get a ride home. So that tells you it was last century also.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did you have multiple instructors while you were going through your training?
Interestingly, no. It was rare, obviously, in the 90s to be a high schooler who was learning to fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my availability was mostly weekend, but the flight school was tiny but mighty. And I was able to do the ground school there. But when it came to doing flight instruction, my flight instructor actually operated an avionics shop at the airport. And that was his job during the week. He was a dad with a bunch of kids, and then he had the time to be my flight instructor. So I was really fortunate to have the same flight instructor, and he got me, from solo to private, and I got my private pilot rating about 3 days before I left for college. Because the other thing, I went to FIT, and I know you went to St. Cloud. If you want to go and start an aviation program, they want you to be done with your private, not almost done. And that New Jersey weather really made it an interesting, will she or won't she, all the way up until the end.
Totally. Weather is an issue. Yeah. The Minnesota piece of it was hard up in St. Cloud too. You always had weather to, deal with. I guess that's why Embry-Riddle and some of their locations are Florida and I believe Phoenix, maybe because of the weather. Better.
Well, you know what? I'll make a pitch because that's where my money is going right now. My son is a sophomore at the University of North Dakota in the commercial aviation program. And they actually have some terrific flying days.
Okay.
I went to Florida Tech. I was fine with being warm all the time and just, waiting for the thunderstorms to pass. So they have a week or two where they call it no flying November or something like that. But he got his instrument rating just right before Thanksgiving, which was so cool, and kind of avoided some of that harshest winter weather.
Great.
I'll never understand it. I'm a summer weather girl, but for those of you who flew in Minnesota or came out in North Dakota, just, a lot of power to you.
I got to tour that school, many, many years ago, but it was a great school back then. And I'm talking like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Great school then. I'm sure it's even better.
Oh, so impressive. I guess commercial for UND. It's just such a proud parent. I mean, but also it was hard not to tour it. I really wanted to tour it as his mom. And I also toured as Jo Damato, workforce development at NBA. It's hard to separate. And so I do get to spend time in a lot of college campuses and aviation programs. And it was really great to see why it lit him up and all the opportunities that it opens for him. But really any university that realizes the importance that they are putting out future leaders, they all have wonderful programs and are unique for a reason. We're all proud of where we went for specific reasons.
Yeah, I did. Well, I did St. Cloud State, in which they went away. They don't have their aviation education, I guess, anymore, which is too bad.
It is. You have such pride about your alma maters, and I know a few friends. Some Daniel Webster people, another example. They're all still close. They still have reunions and get-togethers, but that place, that building, they can't go back and visit. I feel for them.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Okay, so you finished your private just a couple of days before you headed off to college. And did you go to college? What did you go to college for?
Yeah, I think, again, same as you, aviation management, right?
Mm.
So aviation management with flight for me. Mm-hmm. And that would take you all the way up through your multi. And then I stayed to do CFI, II, MEI, because I was an instructor for the university. But yeah, nobody told me, again, the 90s, we didn't have the internet. And my guidance counselors had no idea what to do with a 16-year-old who said, I want to be a pilot. And I said, you can go to the military. And I said, I don't think I want to do that. Like, isn't there something? And so I almost went to, and this makes no sense, I realized, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, because they said, well, I think you have to be an aerospace engineer, and then you probably fly on the side. And I was like, okay. So I applied to aerospace engineering programs, and that's where my parents took me to tour upstate New York. We looked at Clarkson's program, and I figured, okay, I'm going to be an aerospace engineer and I'll keep flying at the airport. And then thankfully, I mentioned that year I flew at the Flying W, an FIT grad was hired as a flight instructor. And he's like, what is wrong with you? Have you ever heard of Embry-Riddle, or where I just graduated from, Florida Tech? And I was like, no, I haven't. I don't know what you're talking about. No one in my family knows this. And my parents were like, oh, let's go visit. And so it was really cool to find out that there were programs. And then I was sold. I'm like, you mean I can major in aviation? Like, I don't think I would have been a good engineer. No. Aviation management math was not engineer math.
No, yes.
Yeah. So, but that was the goal. The goal was go be a pilot. And my goal was always to be a United Airlines pilot. And so I figured there was a script and a flight plan in front of me. And I figured that was exactly how things would play out.
That was so cool. Okay, so I want to back up a little bit, but because I didn't really ask you, did you want to fly all your whole life? Is that what made you kind of go out to your local airport?
Yeah, I did. I have 3 older brothers who were sports obsessed. Number 4 was me. So I had to even out all the teams. I got beat up a fair amount because they needed me to make even whatever game we were playing.
Nice.
I love sports. I love to compete, but I'm not an athlete in that sense. I wasn't flying. They weren't doing. Nobody in my family was doing. And since I was about 8 or 9, when I realized I was also not a ballerina, I had no coordination. I was on the hammock in our backyard, and I looked up, and it must have been like a 172 or a Cherokee flying overhead. And I'm like, well, I could do that. And once that idea got in my head, it never left. And I asked my parents over and over again. And then the Christmas, I was 15, they gave me a bomber jacket for Christmas. And inside the bomber jacket was a little note that said, a gift certificate for your first flight lesson. And they just figured that'll be it. She'll do a flight lesson and finally we'll be done. And,
right.
I'm here to tell you I'm still here.
That's so cool. Like, lots of kids want a pony. Lots of girls, I should say, want a pony. Stuff, and you wanted to fly. That's so cool.
Right? Yeah. Well, yeah.
Did you encounter many females doing similar path, or even any instructors or teachers?
I wish.
Yeah.
I wish. First of all, not the Flying W. They weren't marketing to teenage girls. I don't know if they marketed.
Sure.
I think you just kind of had to know you wanted to do flight lessons. So nobody there. And then at school, there were so few women in the aviation program. I guess they figured they'd put us all together because, we were the third floor of Shaw Hall towards the end of the hallway. There were like 8 of us, or maybe 11 of us. And some of them were ROTC, and we didn't get to know, everybody really well. But probably there were about 8 core of us to, 10 times as many males. And I just remember being so excited. I'm like, oh, they put us all together. Like, there's other teenage girls who already have their private pilot ratings who are going to be going through school with me. And it was amazing.
That's cool.
I didn't know. I mean, I couldn't have been more excited but then also I was so excited to meet all the men. I'm such good friends with so many people I went to college with in that program. And so once I got there, it didn't matter about anything except we all had these common interests. And I didn't have that in high school. I had nobody that wanted to talk to me about aviation or understood that I just did a solo cross country. It was intimidating to the boys. The girls didn't care.
I think that's really interesting. And to point out too, that you didn't necessarily know that Embry-Riddle existed. And how would you? The internet has changed our life. And it feels a little bit like internet has always been with us. But we were in college before any of that was actually up and running, which... not that I'm trying to date us or anything.
I know, I hate that we have to talk about those things, but I got my first email address in college because one of my professors made me. And I'm like, what do I have to get? And I have to send you my homework how electronically. What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's so cool. So chance meeting with somebody that told you all about Embry-Riddle. And then you're like, that's what I want to do. And you went, got accepted, did all your ratings.
Yeah. I will say, just a distinction, I went to Florida Institute of Technology, just a little south of Embry-Riddle in Melbourne, Florida, not the school up north. I did my master's with Embry-Riddle, but all my love and time was right there in Melbourne in the traffic pattern.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. So when you graduated, where did you head to?
Oh gosh. When I graduated, I was fortunate to have been instructing for the school. They hired me my junior year. So I was student flight instructing my entire junior year, my entire senior year, and everybody was trying to figure out what was next. And when you graduate in the late 90s, the regionals would hire you, but you had to pay them to hire you. I don't know if you remember this, but it was somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. And you would pay them upfront. They would train you, and then upon completion of training, I don't remember if you got your money back or you had a training contract. It was unique. Anyway, that world was not for me. I gave it a try. I went and got some Beech 1900D time. I thought that was, a path I was going to go, but something wasn't clicking, which didn't make sense to me because there'd only been a singular goal. I'm pretty goal focused.
Okay.
And I was fortunate, to have found out that there was another path, that there was an entire part of the industry that we hadn't learned about in college.
Yeah.
And I had thought about going back and flight instructing and trying to figure out, do I want to go out west and start doing Grand Canyon tours? Do I want to drop skydive? There must be like more to this big world than just one path. And so I decided, what happens if I don't fly? What if I take a break and see what's out there? And I ended up getting hired at Executive Jet Management less than a year after I graduated. My now husband, then boyfriend, was flying for Comair, which is right in northern Kentucky, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And Executive Jet Management is right at Lincoln Airport, and they needed a dispatcher.
Okay.
And they didn't require to have a dispatch license. And like I said, I was fresh out of college with a 4-year aviation degree, had about 1,000 hours. And it seemed to be a really great fit. And they took a chance on me, and I worked a desk for them. And in less than a year, they asked me if I'd be interested in a promotion. And so that was interesting. I'm like, well, what else is there? I still think I want to fly. So do you have a King Air you didn't show me?
Mm-hmm.
But no, they wanted me to be their director of the training department.
Okay.
Which
all right
is a little kooky to think now. They took a chance on a 23-year-old and said, they're a subsidiary of NetJets. They were just eking towards 100 airplanes. And I had the the honor to be elevated to that position and responsibility in a very male-dominated field as a very young person who had clearly never, flown anything larger than really a twin turboprop. And they wanted to give me this responsibility. And at that point, Lindsay, I couldn't look back. I didn't see a professional flying path for me as much as I thought, this is business aviation. And I wonder if there's some type of path here for me that is just revealing itself. And after my parents got over their panic attack, like, wait a minute, you've always been singularly goal focused. What is this? Mm-hmm. Boy, am I glad I followed those breadcrumbs, because that was 26 years ago. Wow. And it was a wrong turn, accidental. And I wish it had been intentional. That's my goal now, to help people make an intentional decision to choose business aviation, flying, non-flying, whatever. Wow, we have a lot to offer. Just don't make us your alternate plan. Maybe intent. This could be your intent.
That's so awesome. Because like you, I went through school, college, and I didn't hear anything about the general aviation side of it. It was all commercial based. And I knew I didn't want to fly not too long after I got, my third year or so. But I talked to other people on the podcast, and a lot of the schools are still not offering, they're still not pushing that business aviation side of it, which is unfortunate. So I'm just so glad you guys are working on it, because I think more people need to know it's available.
You're so right. We're working on it, and I wish I had a magic wand. I wish I could spend my full-time job is to go and spend a week at each college campus and say, did you know about all these resources? Did you know about all these opportunities? Yeah. The good news is we have a beautiful staff at NBAA. We have 5 regional directors around the country who do an incredible job. And we have over 60 regional groups who do a beautiful job of connecting in their communities. And they, maybe they are former students at some of the places they go back and visit, maybe their parents or their employers of a lot of the graduates. And what's, I think, really important is that they see the connection, and that they can go in and say, we have mentors for you. We have scholarships for you. We have internships for you. We have a special membership for you.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. There's just so much. And so I am so grateful for all of NBA's volunteers, and especially those that, can help us reach every single student that hopefully says, oh, wow, light bulb moment.
Yeah. And we spoke about this with somebody else. However, I would like to reiterate or tell people about it again. NBAA, you guys have put together a PowerPoint that can go into schools, and you download it. Okay. And I'm going to say I'm shamelessly using that, because we're going to the high school on Monday, the 29th of January. So I'm not sure when this podcast will air, so we'll have done it already, but we're going to present that. And I encourage other people, you just have to go on NBAA, and you know this, but /students, and you can find this really cool PowerPoint that you can bring into this. It's all done for you. Anyway,
I must have just had. Did you just have Noah on your podcast?
Yeah,
did you just talk to me about this?
He did.
I haven't listened to it yet, but I did just hang up on the phone from Noah about an hour ago.
Funny,
and told him I was heading over here. But he and Elena Hall, two of our amazing Yo pros at NBAA, we were able to look at an older resource and give it fresh life. There's always been a PowerPoint. I think what we didn't realize, and I'll put myself out on the line here, is I am the age that when I go and talk to college students, I'm also about the same age as their parents or maybe some other professors. And what I think they want to hear or see I understand, is maybe a little dated. And when we listen to and are willing to take that reverse mentorship from our young professionals, and one of our NBA core values is lead from any seat. Elena and Noah had this. They looked at that, Joe, we've got this. And they not only revamped ours, but they went out and asked our regional directors, we know you're all using PowerPoints. You've probably made a lot of versions of this over the years. They went and talked to our committee members. It could have been the schedulers committee or the maintenance committee or IOC or BAMC, like, hey, everybody, would you send us back your PowerPoints? We're going to make one. We're going to keep the best of the elements and your intents, but your 9 pictures on one slide or all of your text here and there, we're going to make this a more impactful product. And that's what they did. And I'm so glad. Thank you for mentioning nba.org/students. That is, I know you'll link to that. We've made that hopefully a place that any person who's curious about where to get started in business aviation can find that as a resource. There's a really cool video that links to our YouTube page. It's about a 4-minute video. It's from 2019. We have plans to, refresh. But that is a really great video. If you're going into a school and you only have a few minutes, we know that video works really well and gets the students who are never going to make eye contact with you or look up from their phone. You have a fighting chance. So a video, you don't even have to play the whole video. That's one way to start. The PowerPoint is great. There's some downloadable posters on there. There's a trifold brochure that they can, put up a QR code. They can scan all this and they can get an idea of what some of the starting salaries are, the different professions. So we've really tried to make it something, whether you're you and you're going to talk to a school, or you're an advisor to a student, an important person in their life. We'll keep working on it, but I think it's a really cool revamp of an older resource.
I love it because I think that it also makes it less daunting. Like, one thing is to commit to going to a school and talking to them and everything, but when you have those resources already at hand and good resources, it makes it so much easier to say, yes, I can do that. I can help somehow.
It's incredible. And, a lot of us are using virtual technology, obviously, to interact with students or to drop into classrooms now. And that's another way to do it. You don't have to use the PowerPoint, but I know one person, she talks to students all the time. She's so successful at this. She just pulls up the NBA website. And while she has the student's attention, she just sort of navigates it and shows them different things they might be interested in, pops over to here, pops over to there, and then says, oh, did you want a scholarship? Were you looking for an internship? Do you need a mentor? Oh. And she kind of gives them like a walking tour with her mouth of some places. There's a couple of different ways you can use our materials, and you can stretch it from, I only have 10 minutes, to they ask me to fill a whole hour. I'm in person, I'm virtual, they're coming to me, I'm going to be talking to them in front of an airplane. So we hope there's enough there for you all to feel like you can still be creative, and it can be your personal message, but you're not out there alone.
That's so wonderful. And NBAA I know you guys have resources like that all throughout your website for different things. And I'll go back. You were talking about how you started working in their training department, but I didn't actually talk to you about how did you go from there into NBAA?
Oh, that's a cool story, because it was one of those moments. I recently sat down with a notebook and tried to come up with some of the different really big decision points in my life or that have shaped my career. And, I think we kind of already talked about a few just through conversation, but certainly the decision point to see what a career could look like at EJM was one. And I'm so grateful they were my business aviation origin story. Right around, January 2001, my husband got hired at Delta. But by now we were married. We have our 25th wedding anniversary this year. So that tells you,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I always say my longest marriage is to aviation, and my second longest marriage is my actual marriage. But he got hired in January 2001, and so he left Comair for Delta. And he said, look, the next commute is on me, which I loved. There's such a mutual respect in our relationship for both of our careers still, but back then too. And he said, as long as it's a one-leg commute, if there's something else you want to do or try. We were living in Cincinnati. Yes, you found Lunkin, but it's kind of because I'm based at CBG. And that was really intriguing to me. And I thought, I want to get my master's, and college was awesome. So maybe we just, you get an Orlando base and we go back to Melbourne. So Florida Tech's like, yeah, come on back, be a recruiter. Let's talk about your master's. And I'm going to get back to flight instructing. This will be great. And so he would come back and forth in training, and he's like, what are we doing? And I'm like, I'm really building a good career here. We're going to stay in Cincinnati. And then he'd go back to Orlando, he'd go back to training, and he'd come back and he's like, okay, so I'm like, no, I think we're going to go back to college. We're going to go to Melbourne. And the joke, I think, for him, every week he'd go back, and like all of the people he was in training with are like, what are you guys doing? What's up with your wife now? And so he's like, well, you guys won't believe this one. I think we're moving to DC. In the middle of all this, this poor guy is just trying to fulfill his lifelong dream. He'd always wanted Delta. And I was subscribed to NBAA airmail.
Yeah.
And I still have the printout. It's in I don't keep a lot of paper, but this piece of paper I printed out a job posting that NBAA made on pilots airmail.
Okay.
And it said they were starting a new position at the FAA's Air Traffic Control System Command Center.
Yeah. All right.
And they needed a business aviation liaison to be based in this FAA facility.
Okay.
And you didn't have to be a controller. Business aviation and pilot or dispatch experience preferred.
So, okay. Am I curious, is this the same air traffic services that NBAA still has where there's a liaison? So you
are talking to employee number one.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, my start date was July 1st, 2001.
Nice.
And that was the biggest risk I think I've ever taken. I had a very stable, secure, we were newlyweds with a starter home, and I was director of pilot training at a subsidiary of NetJets, and grateful for every opportunity. And we kind of built our newlyweds. So that was great. And then there was this go back to college. Who doesn't want to go back to college and recruit for the school you love and start flying again, get my master's? And that sounds really cool. Mm-hmm. And both are really safe, such safe choices. And then, my husband said, next commute's on me. And I swear, I've always remembered those words, because that meant let you figure out how you want to grow. You made a conscious decision that flying is not what you want to do, but you don't know yet what you want to do. And I'm like, well, what do you think of this? And so we agreed. We're like, I'm going to try it for a year. No matter what, I've got to give it 1 year. And I'll tell you, Lindsay, by day 3, I was terrified. Right away, did I make the wrong decision? So this command center, if you haven't been, if anybody's, it's so cool.
I've never been, but I've
seen war games. I always say, those of us who were 80s kids, watching Matthew Broderick and war games, it kind of looks like that in there. And my interview was super cool. And I'm like, yeah, I got to work here. And then my first day at work, we sold our house, we moved. My husband's now based for Delta in Orlando. And he's like, I'll commute to Dallas. And we got an apartment right near the command center. We're like, all right, let's figure this thing out. And, day 1, my boss is now retired, one of my mentors and most treasured people in my life, Bob Lamond. He's like, okay. He's like, here's your computer. Here's your workstation. I've got to go on a trip. He's like, so I'll be back next week. They're going to come and get you an ID fin. And these airline guys, the A4A desk, they'll help you out if you need to know anything. Welcome aboard. I'll see you later.
Okay. Just drop you there. Okay.
I remember this place the position didn't exist yet. It was so shiny. NBAA had just sent a computer over. Nobody at the command center knew what NBAA stood for. And they just didn't. It's just how our colleges didn't know to tell us about business aviation. ATC did not know there was a Business Aviation Association.
Sure.
They knew the Airline Association was the desk next to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a very high level tenured facility. So people who are working there were probably going to retire from there. So we're talking about a majority of 50 and over males. And then what do you do with now this 25-year-old? And she's tall. Is she with the NBA? What is this? What is this?
Right.
What is this? And by day 3, I was thinking, what did I do? But we said it here.
Yeah.
And, obviously, spoiler alert, I'm still here. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But it took daily bravery to say,
sure,
I'm going to figure this out. NBAA sees potential here, and they saw potential in me, and they don't know what to do with this yet. Mm-hmm. And that was what they hired me. They're like, we want you to figure out, what could this be? What is this? What is business aviation? How is business aviation regarded in the air traffic system? When they have a telcon at 6 a.m. to discuss the weather for the day and how the routes are looking and what demand looks like and what gates are open. How can they be considering Trenton Mercer when they're talking about the New York airspace? How can they, consider during swap, during severe weather season, the need for departures to get out of Teterboro light planes, in addition to LaGuardia, JFK, Newark? And who's going to be the voice that's going to translate what business aviation is. You don't have to be a controller, but you need to understand business aviation and have the patience to understand that you're David to a Goliath. And I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I'm so proud of the air traffic services position and success, and which I will say I haven't had anything to do with the daily operations there since 2008. So all of their success is their success, but I'm really proud to know that I'm the origin story of that.
So how long did it take before you felt comfortable in there? I mean, I'm assuming you use a lot of your dispatch and actual flying education that you had.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, let's see. There's a way to say this, and it's probably just to say it. I don't know if I ever would have felt comfortable there. I think based on how it was in July and August, at the end of that year, I probably would have chalked that up to, I did that and I'm going back to a safe place. And instead what happened was 9/11. And I was in the facility that morning as everything unfolded. And, I think that's a story for another podcast.
Yeah, that's a story. It's not right there.
What I will say, and what the FAA said to us, was probably if NBAA hadn't had that position prior to 9/11, they probably wouldn't let us in the facility after. And within an hour, by the afternoon, the tall girl in the back, because my desk was in the back on this war games floor, the one who sits next to the airline, she can answer some of our questions. Can you explain what is Part 91? What is Part 135? What is a fractional? How do you get in touch with your members? How can you get a message out to them? Do you have a headquarters? Do you have somebody you can call? I mean, it was all this curiosity. Can you look at these, in the days that followed, helping understand clarity with reading a NOTAM? And, if you remember all the NOTAMs then, they were clearly making access available to airlines, but we had members who were part of rescue efforts in New York City. We had one member who needed to get their airplane in. They actually had, and I'll always remember this, I know we all get a little emotional talking about these things or remembering these things, but they were trying to get in a large shipment of pads, boots for the search and rescue dogs.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They had these and they needed to get in. And I was able to advocate for that airplane, for that member, and explain this is the value that these people need to get in now, because those dogs need these now, because we have a search and rescue operation going on now.
That's so.
And so did I ever feel comfortable? No, but was I forced into suddenly being essential and understanding the impact I could have on being a voice for business aviation? I was able to start finding my voice. And again, the airline three who worked at the ATA desk next to me, they couldn't have been better friends and better mentors, because they knew none of us were competing at that level. They were actually proud, I think, to help me be a David to a Goliath. And then I think the FAA was proud to see my growth after you're like, hey, she can use her voice and we can have hard conversations. And it is kind of fun when she stamps her feet and insists that, we close Newark for a while because, White Plains there's snow removal yet. And we just can't keep White Plains closed in perpetuity because we're trying to do Newark snow. Like, that's not fair. And she's right. If she's saying it's not fair, we probably need to listen to her and not ignore her, because a year ago, nobody was in here saying that in person to our faces. And then we're like, we need to hire some more people and some more people and some more people. And we were there five days a week for 15 hours a day, because there were two of us. And then it was, will we ever be No, we'll never be 7 days a week. Oh, we're 7 days a week. We'll never have 3 people. We have 3 people. We have 4 people. We have 5 people.
Yeah.
And amazing. And when I see how essential they still are, and like I said, that's all thanks to their hard work and what they've built. I'm just proud that it still is essential now. It's great.
That is so cool. Okay, I have a couple, 3 things. One, you don't happen to know, how did NBAA decide they wanted that position? Do you know who?
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah? Okay. I'm always curious, who, that was a great idea. Who brought that up and instituted it?
So again, hey, I wasn't in the room, so I'll tell you the story I know. They say there's fiction in all memories, but what I understand was the FAA did realize they had this amazing facility, this air traffic control system command center. And we have a robust national airspace system. And there are more players in it than just 121s and military. And I think when they looked around at who's at the table, they realized somebody was missing from the table.
Yeah.
And they know who to talk to, because we had been and still are a large part of the collaborative decision-making process, of multiple ATC-focused work groups. Of course, we still are now. We've held leadership roles for decades in that space. And so NBAA was well known to the FAA. And so the idea was, we will never allow each airline to have their own person here. They are represented through their association.
Yeah.
Similarly, would you want to have a business aviation representation here? And then with anything, if anyone knows how association worlds work, and rightly so, staff manages, board governs. And so I've seen, again, huge respect for our board and the board of directors at the time. They had to contemplate it. Most things always take a little while, but I think once they decided, the way I understand it, in April 2001, yes, let's do this. It was, well, we got to get, the FAA wants them like yesterday. And so that's why I felt like when I answered that job posting, how quickly it all happened. We sold our house in 2 weeks. The day I gave my 2-week notice to EJM was the same day, I had a realtor putting the sign up, and we found an apartment sight unseen and got in a car, and I was ready to be there my first day of work. But again, if we hadn't been there, and if it had taken the board even one more quarter, or to take an NBAA another quarter to find somebody, I wouldn't be here. I would be probably still fighting shark ticket in Florida, or
Funny how life, like one decision, that decision, yes, post that job. Well, and multiple decisions, I guess, because you took a chance on replying to the job too. So cool. And I think people don't know so much about that service either. And you can probably tell even more, but it's a subscription-based service that NBAA provides. And it allows the operator to get daily emails. I think there's actually 2 that come out, and they're super helpful. They talk about where are the slowdowns, where are we going to expect to have delays, all that stuff. It's all in one email. And then if you have an issue, you can call them. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can call the representative or email them and say, I'm having this trouble. Can you help me?
If you're a subscriber, yes, you do get all more access via phone call and all that. But what I think is really cool about what we do at Air Traffic Services is whether or not you use them. And so NBAA, we have over 11,000 member companies.
Wow.
Most people are not subscribers to Air Traffic Services. That's just the math. I always used to think, and not in a pat me on the back, look how great I am kind of way, but I would always think our members have no idea that I was the person that just convinced FAA to close Newark and open White Plains, get their snow removal done so that they can reopen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many unsung, unseen things that the NBAA staff are doing out there all day long, every day, that whether or not you're a subscriber, you are benefiting from certain gates being opened, or they're educating ATC on the fact that you can fly at higher altitudes, or that you are willing to take some overwater routes to do that Northeast corridor if you're, New York down to Florida, or some coded. All my terminology is dated, but there are a number of things there that I always think to myself, especially on the worst weather day in the Northeast, and if it's day 4 or 5 of thunderstorms, how hard that team is working, and nobody has any idea.
Yeah.
Because you need to advocate something really hard every day, and then also do it in a way that the next day everybody's cool with each other, because it's a brand new day. Sure. And so you can't just, stamp your feet and wave your hands and have steam coming out of your ears, because there's also, it's relationships that you're building. And the next day is a whole different day. And I always think the same thing, Thanksgiving, because that's like one of the busiest travel days of the year. And, but yes, people can certainly learn more about NBAA Air Traffic Services. I would encourage them to go to nba.org and be curious. And then, of course, they can reach out to me or anybody on staff. We'd be happy to help them learn more about that.
Awesome. Great. I'll pop it on the bottom in the details too.
Yeah.
If you want to link up to it. Yeah. It's a really cool program. Well, okay. So Jo, what are you doing these days? you left the air traffic services kind of part.
Yeah.
Like, what are you passionate about these days?
Honestly, well, so at NBAA, I get to do cool stuff with great people. That's like, I don't know how else to describe it. I have a really long title that has a whole lot of words in it, but it does match up with what my passion is, what I know your passion is. I mean, what I get to do is I get to help people. What our team says, and this is not any NBA official motto, but the team of people I work with, we say, will this help an individual ascend in their career? That's all I want to do. I want to help our members on the individual basis keep growing. I want them to stay in business aviation. I want them to say, I don't want them to be stuck, but if they're stuck, I want to help them get unstuck. If they aspire to something more than what they're getting to do, then I want to help them grow and develop as a leader. So that can mean any number of things. You know, what do I do in NBAA? It's how do I support the people who do amazing things at NBAA? And so when we talk about the CAM, you're a CAM, I'm a CAM.
Yes.
So we could talk about the Certified Aviation Manager Program. Certainly a hallmark at NBAA. And then there's so much more than that. There are our professional development programs. We do those around the country, either with regional groups or at our conferences or online. We do our conferences. So I am the staff liaison to the leadership conference, and that is right around the corner in Palm Springs. So I get to work with I will see you there. Yes. So many of us are going to be there. So I get the privilege of being a staff liaison to BAMC, the Business Aviation Management Committee.
Okay.
Previous to that, I was the longtime S&D staff liaison, and that's probably where I made all of my best friends. No joke, who I'm still best friends with now. They're so near and dear to my heart. I lobbied hard to get S&D responsibilities.
Oh, cool.
Years and years ago, in 2003 specifically. And I got him, and I was so excited. And I was just as excited to realize when it was time for me to pass the torch, the same way Jay Evans passed it to me and Bill Stein passed it to him. And so Tyler Austin is the very capable staff liaison to schedulers and dispatchers. Molly Hitch is on my team. She does our amazing work with the professional development programs and with managing our learning management system. And she's a staff liaison to the PDP review committee and the flight attendant and flight technician committee. Tyler, of course, S&D staff liaison and CAM governing board staff liaison. And, and our team keeps growing. You had Noah on your podcast. I get to support the Yo Pros. That's what we were talking about earlier today. How can I be their voice at a senior level to make sure they're getting all the support they need? And, I got to pop onto a Yo Pro advocacy call today. And I didn't come off mute once. I was just really proud to be in that meeting and see the great work of all of our young professional members who are leaders already. But they don't know this, but I'm looking, there's 16 rectangles on the screen, and I'm like, they're going to be running this place. Like, this is theirs. Like, I'm actually getting to watch. I was not on a Zoom, neither were you when we were 25, but, it's really cool to say I am that person watching us 20 years ago. And how cool is this? So I get to do a lot of advocacy and support for them. And of course, anything workforce development related. And so initiatives you see at NBAA, again, not in a vacuum, with those regional directors, with our other staff members, with our regional groups, our committees. And then outside of that, I was on the Youth Access to American Jobs in Aviation Task Force. And, that was our charter. How can we bring more kids to want to be in aviation?
Yeah.
I'm active with women in aviation, big fan of women in corporate aviation, and I support them whenever and however I can through NBAA channels. So all the things that I'm passionate about and interested in, I mean, heck, I'm solving the workforce shortage one Damato at a time. I got one you are now, and the other, we're going to start doing our college tours, but my younger son is interested in being a maintainer. And so I don't know anything about that. But I'm really excited to go and tour schools and try really hard to tour as mom and not workforce development, Jo Damato. But it's something I live literally every day, whether it's at work or in some of my hobbies or with my friendships or even here at home. I'm just so lucky. I'm the luckiest person at NBAA. I really am.
That's awesome. It sounds like there's just like a lot of alignment in general in your life. You've aligned your home life and your work life with your values, and sounds awesome. I hope so. My favorite thing I get to do is do this kind of stuff, like staff
cool conversations with cool people about stuff that we all love. Like it's like a mutual, let's talk about what we get to do in business aviation together. And I hope I've done and keep doing that well. And you're who you see is always who you're going to get with me.
Yeah.
And I think NBAA has made it really easy for me to be that. Ed has made it really easy for me to be that. And I loved your podcast with Ed. Thought that was fantastic.
That was great. Yeah, that was so good. It was so nice of him to spend some time too.
It was awesome. And I love the fact that you're getting so many different voices in here on staff. Because I do sometimes think I love when our staff and our young professionals get amplified because they do such good behind the scenes work. And, I guess Ed, it's good that he gets to be recognized too. But I think, he's got a really good platform. But the Noahs of the world for sure, and the Elena Halls and, the Molly Hitches and the Tyler Austins. It's really cool. And there's so many more, Colin King and Alex Judge. I mean, I'm never going to name them all because all of these people do such an amazing job for us and with you, with our members. And we're just part of this big family. And that's what leadership is going to be like in a few weeks.
I can't wait. Yeah.
One big conversation we're all going to be having with each other for 3 days, right? It's awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be totally cool. So just kind of on a personal side, are there any books or podcasts that you listen to often that you might suggest maybe for a young person who's coming in to the industry, maybe wants to learn more?
I don't know that I would recommend differently per generation. I would actually ask them. I would ask them, hey, what are you reading that I should be reading? Maybe.
Yeah. Right.
That might be. So I think I'll hang up and call somebody after this and find out. But yeah, I've got to say for me, for podcasts, I just love listening to these types of podcasts. So let's see. Recently I listened to your interview with Kelly Rittenhouse and I liked that.
That was,
I love listening to Shasta Ways and listening to her interview with Julia Harrington. And, I love listening to Sarah Calmetta in the lounge. And, she had Jenny Showalter just on. Like, I feel like it's so fun to hear these podcasts out there and say, well, I know both the interviewer and the interviewee, and that's kind of fun. But when I can, anything leadership focused, or if I just need a good laugh. But for books, I am a big reader. That is my disconnect. And this is going to sound funny. And I'm going to show it to you. I know you can see this, even though the audience can't. So it literally is called How to Get on Podcast.
Well, Michelle,
there's a reason.
I love her.
That's why. Yeah. So Michelle, one of our S&D committee alums who I have treasured my relationship with her, for, 15 or 18 years ago when I met her. She's just amazing. And I've always followed what's Michelle doing because she did leave the aviation industry, but she's been building a name for herself. And about a week ago, she posted that she had a book coming out that was called How to Get on Podcast. And I was like, well, I'm not even going to think twice. I'm going to support Michelle and buy this book. Right. And so, the coincidence that we're on a podcast today, but I read it on my train ride home from DC last night. And I was able to send her a picture of me reading her book. And I'm like, hey, I just got to the chapter on how to be a good podcast guest and I'll try it out with Lindsay tomorrow. So
that's awesome.
And she's an NBA committee alumni member. I wanted to give her a shout out because she's one of those good S&D friends that I love is popping into my life in a different way. And then I always recommend to people, and again, because one of my S&D committee friends from back in the day, Amy Roy, one year she sent me Anne Morrow Lindbergh's Gift from the Sea.
Okay.
And this book is written by, who knew? I mean, we all talk about Charles Lynn. Anne was an author in her own right, and such a tremendous force in aviation. And in 1955, she wrote this book that's really a reflection on where she saw her role as a woman in that time and all the hats she'd worn throughout her life. Writer, wife, mother, community member, volunteer. It's amazing. And so sometimes it's good to pause and say, I got to pick up Gift from the Sea again and let it re-energize me because this is 2024 and Anne was writing about this stuff. And sorry, it is 2024. That's what it is. Yeah. You were to say out loud. And she was writing this in 1955. No, still relevant. So,
wow. All right. I'll post both Michelle's book and Gift from the Sea on the notes in case anybody wants to find those books.
That's great. As S&D committee members seem to know where the where the good reads are at, or they write them themselves.
That's awesome.
You write it, I'll read it.
That is so cool. Awesome. Jo, well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been just really eye-opening. I think that I really enjoy these podcasts because a lot of times we see you in your role. We see people in the committee roles, but we don't really know who you are. And we don't get a chance. Well, I guess we could ask you. But anyway, I never asked you, if, really who you were and got a chance to talk to you. So I've really enjoyed that and learning all of your background. I think that is so cool that you started that desk because I love that service that you guys provide there.
I will pass that on to them. But I love how much you and I have in common. I think I got to learn a little bit more about you, Lindsay, and I should have asked also. So how about at leadership? We try to spend some time together.
Definitely.
In person. I think I would love that.
I'll come find you for sure.
That's great.
Hey, Jo, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, maybe had some questions about any of the services that you work with, or just wanted to pick your brain about something, how would they find you?
Well, I'm going to say connect with me on LinkedIn. But if you send me a message, I'm going to be awful about remembering that I have a message from you over in my LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn and introduce yourself. But if you want to reach me, my email and my work email is great. JDamato@NBAA.org. And I love connecting with people who are like-minded. And what I mean by that is, do you love business aviation? So do I. Let's talk.
All right. Perfect. Sounds good. We'll pop that in there. And then, Jo, in case you're up to it, I would love to hear that story about 9/11. That seems like that would be
I think
awesome.
I could do that. I was surprised. I'll say it. I was not surprised, but it's obviously I saw some emotion in your face and I put some in mine. You don't realize, and then you sit with a moment and you're thinking, wow, I didn't even realize how much time has passed when you sit to reflect on it. Sometimes you need to sit in that for a little bit, but thank you, because it was also wonderful to be able to just remember that our members do such amazing things.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be painted with a broad brush. That story and some of the others I have tucked away. They're just really important illustrations of why business aviation is so critical and why NBA's mission, which I'm sure Ed said on his, but if he didn't, to foster an environment for business aviation to thrive in the United States and around the world. I take that mission very seriously. And I know our members do too.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, I would definitely like to come back and catch you up. That'll be maybe a harder one, but it will be really interesting. So.
Yeah. Do you have like a cocktails and conversation podcast?
That's a really good idea. That's a total good idea, actually. We might need a few for that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. It's really been an honor, and I appreciate spending so much time with you today. Thank you. It's a gift. A gift for me. I'm going to add this to my gifts that I'm collecting. It's time with you.
Thank you. Likewise, Jo. And I will see you then next in about 10 days.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes and check out our website for up-and-coming podcasts. This has been a production of the Business Aviation Collective, sponsored by LD Aviation.